All right, let's dive into some of the most influential books you've probably never even heard of. We're talking about the books of Enoch, and you're going to be surprised by how deeply they connect to the New Testament.
You ever been reading the Bible and you hit a verse that just feels weird? Like it's referencing a story you're supposed to know but you don't? A detail that kind of comes out of left field? Well, you're definitely not alone. And the answer is often found in the world outside the pages of the Bible itself.
Okay, check this out. It's from the book of Jude. He's quoting a prophecy, and he says, point blank, that it's from Enoch. You know, the guy who walked with God way back in Genesis. But here's the mystery. That prophecy, it's nowhere to be found in the Old Testament. So where on earth did Jude get it from?
And it's not just Jude either. Over in 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul talks about this wild, mystical journey he took to the third heaven and to paradise. Now, his original audience probably nodded along like, yep, got it. But for us, it just sounds strange. What kind of cosmic map was he using? These are the exact puzzles we're going to solve.
To find the answers, we've got to go back in time to a period of incredible crisis in Jewish history. See, the keys to unlocking these mysteries are hidden in a collection of texts that were born from centuries of struggle and turmoil.
These texts belong to a category with a fancy name, pseudo-epigrapha. Now, this doesn't mean they were fakes or forgeries trying to fool people. Not at all. Think of them more as writings from communities that were under immense pressure, just trying to make sense of all their suffering. So, they attributed these writings to ancient heroes like Enoch, men who were seen as having a direct line to God to give their message of hope and judgment some serious authority.
And believe me, their situation was grim. We're talking about centuries of hardship, from having their sacred temple desecrated to being conquered by Rome to launching these incredibly bloody and failed revolts. They were living in a world that just felt completely overrun by evil. This constant state of crisis is exactly what created the perfect storm for apocalyptic literature like the books of Enoch to be written. This desperate search for answers brings us right to the most famous of these texts, 1 Enoch. What this book does is take these short, super cryptic stories from the Old Testament and just blow them up into this epic saga of rebellious angels, monstrous giants, and cosmic saviors.
And the scale of this expansion is just massive. Genesis 6 gives us, 4 mysterious verses about sons of God and these beings called the Nephilim. But 1 Enoch, it takes that little snippet and turns it into this huge, detailed story. The sons of God now have names. They're a rogue group of angels called the Watchers, led by a guy named Azazel. And they don't just take wives. They're accused of teaching humanity the arts of war and seduction, basically unleashing all this evil onto the world.
And their kids, the Nephilim? Oh, they weren't just mighty men of old. According to 1 Enoch, they were straight-up monsters, giants who were a terrifying 3,000 cubits tall. I mean, do the math. That's almost 4,500 feet, taller than any skyscraper we have today. This wasn't just some fairy tale. It was a way of explaining why evil in the world felt so overwhelmingly huge.
And these giants were absolute chaos. This quote paints this horrifying picture of a world just spiraling out of control. These things are consuming everything in their path, even turning on each other. You have to imagine, for the people writing and reading this at the time, this was a powerful origin story for the brutal violence and corruption they saw everywhere around them.
But 1 Enoch wasn't just about monsters. It was also a place where key ideas about a coming Messiah were really fleshed out. Take the title Son of Man. It goes on this amazing journey. In the book of Ezekiel, it's just a way of saying a human being. Then in Daniel, it gets an upgrade. It's this heavenly, divine figure. But it's 1 Enoch that acts as this crucial bridge. It transforms that figure into a full-on messianic savior, calling him the elect one and the light of the Gentiles. And that rich, complex idea is the direct backdrop for why Jesus uses that title for himself more than any other in the Gospels.
So 1 Enoch helps us crack the code on Jude's prophecy and the whole Son of Man title. Awesome. But what about Paul's journey to the third heaven? For that, we need to turn to a different, but related text, 2 Enoch. It basically gives us a detailed map of the universe. In this ancient worldview, the heavens weren't just empty space. They were layered, like floors in a building. The first heaven, that was the sky you could see, with the stars and the clouds. But then it gets interesting. The second heaven was a prison for those rebellious angels. And the third heaven, that was paradise, a blissful garden for the righteous. You go up a few more levels and you find the Watcher angels in the fifth, and then all the way at the top, in the seventh heaven, you find the throne of God himself. So with this cosmic map in your mind, when Paul says he was caught up to the third heaven and then immediately says he was caught up to paradise, he wasn't speaking in some secret code. He was using a shared cultural roadmap of the universe that his audience would have instantly understood from stories just like 2 Enoch. He was telling them in their own language that he had been to the place where the righteous go.
So let's tie this all together, right? These books, 1 and 2 Enoch, they aren't in most of our Bibles today, but their influence on the New Testament writers is just undeniable. They create this hidden context, this missing piece of the puzzle that makes so much of the New Testament suddenly click into place.
So, why does any of this actually matter? Well, because the New Testament writers were brilliant communicators. Of course, they knew their scriptures backwards and forwards, but they were also smart enough to use the popular stories, the language, and the big ideas of their own time to make their message hit home. Texts like Enoch gave them a shared cultural template. It was the imaginative world their audience already lived in, and they used it to explain really profound truths about good, evil, judgment, and salvation.
Ultimately, if we really want to grasp what the New Testament writers were saying, we have to do more than just read the words on the page. We have to try to understand the rich, vibrant, and sometimes very strange world of stories that they and their original audience were swimming in every single day.
And this all leaves us with one last question to chew on. The Bible isn't the only ancient text with a hidden context. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other forgotten stories, what other hidden ideas are quietly shaping the world that we think we know right now?